Let me pass my phone. Okay. Center. Okay. So beautiful. Okay, so less than 56 seconds now. And we are live. So let me stop the music. Like I find out. Okay. Hello everyone. Welcome back again to this new live session. Today we are going to be learning a lot from Ivan here. I'm going to allow him to introduce himself. Is a top leader when it comes to design system in the UX community. So without much further ado, Ivan, over to you.
Well, hello everyone. First, thank you for having me. Yeah, I think Adi has been just contacting me for the last few weeks, just trying to pick me and to join this effort, which is absolutely valid, and I love it because it's supporting a community for free, which is not something very common in the US. And about myself, I don't know. Probably at the moment I start presenting, if you want me to share already the slides, I can start from there and present a little bit about myself.
Yes, please.
Let me share the screen. Send a request.
Or maybe you want to grant him.
Yeah, I have sent a request just
Okay.
to be granted. Yeah.
Maybe can you accept? Or am I the one? See. Okay, you should be able to share now. Can you try it?
Okay. Ready. So let me know when you can see it, or if you can see it.
Yeah, I can see it now.
Okay, this is great. So basically, I had this conversation with Adi and Mabel, and sorry for
Nike.
Anike, but mispronouncing her name. But we were talking about the small history that I have in design. In the past, I used to be an accountant in my country, but when I moved to the US, basically I became a designer. and I started doing design in college but not related to UI or UX, but it was more graphic design. Then I realized that I really enjoy doing web design. I started with just small steps like doing landing pages in college, landing pages for the first company that I worked for. It was a B2B company, a carpet company. Then I moved to more like from web design to a payments company, which is a fintech company. There I did a lot of UI, not more related to the experience because they already had like all the platform in place. They had a different setup for the research. So I was doing a lot of UI related to mobile and also web apps. And then I jumped to crypto, which is basically, I would say, when my UX UI journey started, because I did a little bit of everything there, user research, some testing, prototyping. It was a more complete environment. And that was my previous experience before JP Morgan, and very enriching, very beautiful team, great company, 21 shares. And then I fell in love in that company. I fell in love with design systems, which is something I wanted to implement. And it's something that I'm going to talk today in the small case study. So if that's a good introduction, just let me know if I can continue to the case study.
Okay. So thank you so much for that, Ivan. So Ivan has had at least 8 years in the design in the design space, trying to make things work out around design system and helping different companies grow in terms of design system. So what you're here to learn today is majorly about design system. So Ivan, I think over to you now. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Something that I forgot to say, and probably we're in the same team. I love to play soccer. I love to watch soccer. So outside of work, I just, as you can see, I play, I watch, and I spend time with my family, my son. So that's outside of work, which is something that I would like to share.
Okay.
So now what I do right now in JP Morgan, I would say it's because it's very focusing on I belong to a design system team, which is Solve Design System. And this is very specific. I'm not doing a lot of UX right now. I'm involved in research, but not that deep. So it's more technical. So I wanted to share this before, to give you some background. What I do in JP Morgan is basically we do specifications for components and patterns. Most of the people associate design system with components, but it's deeper than that. It's much more complex. And I would say that it's even more important, the visual design language of the company. It's more important than components or patterns. So yeah, I'm working on that. I work in pattern frameworks. I'm in charge of the patterns right now, working with different teams and contributions this quarter, the previous quarter and this quarter. I'm a kind of evangelist in the company right now for adoption of the design system, and collaborate a lot with tech and development because our positions in the design system teams are very related to code. And so we need to understand, not deeply, but understand how code works and how we can interact with engineers and developers who work on this. Then we can jump to this case study. Basically, this is not related to JP Morgan. It's based on my previous company. And the case study I'm going to show you is basically we needed to revamp a platform. So how we could create consistency for that. And during the presentation or during this small share, I'm going to give you first an overview for you to understand the context of what we were going through as a team and of this specific platform, what we're going through just to let the stakeholders know that this is, a design system maybe was a big need at the moment, the initiative that we took as a team to make this happen, the results and the takeaways that we got from there at the time. So let's jump with the overview, right? The main challenge here and for us as a team, because the company had three different products, four I would say, but three different products that were core or important. But the most important was this one, right? This platform where the company used to make money because the operations moved through this interface in this specific system. So we had to redesign an operational platform that is visually inconsistent, or it was visually inconsistent at the time, right? and had a lot of usability issues and inconsistency. So that was the challenge in not only for me as a designer, but as a team, because we had product manager, we had backend and front end developers in charge of this, that we were working together. So we wanted to unify it and make this consistent. So the goals, as you can see, usually you cannot expand too much. So we had different goals that we presented to the stakeholders and owners of the company. And basically, the first goal was to understand the user's needs. And I was very lucky because at the time, our users is basically they were like the operations team. And the operations team, it was probably the most important team making money in the company. And they were 3 desks away from me. So I had chat with the user research testing basically next to my desk. It was great. So we already had that. But we had the inconsistency. So another goal was create visual consistency in that platform and the other platforms that the company had. And the third goal was, once we settled up with this idea of the design system, we didn't have it at the time. We had just this idea of that UI kit, which is not a design system, right? And
Yeah.
so how socialize the content through the other teams. So those were the 3 goals that we had in mind. But this case study is going to focus specifically in how we created visual consistency. So the initiatives we had at the time was we started with the product manager, a usability heuristics evaluation. Remember, we already had the research from the users, but even in the interface, we wanted to go in deep. So if you're familiar with heuristics, you can go to Nielsen Norman Group. Those are 10 heuristics, very important heuristics, very simple, but I can tell you that can give you a very good perspective of a user interface, what
Yeah.
can be wrong, what can be improved. Even if you don't have a chance to do like research or user research, this is the best way to start and handle, okay, what's wrong and what you as a designer can prioritize when you need to, provide solutions for a company if you're doing contract, or for your company if you belong a company. So then the other initiative is, let's build a design system, not a UI kit, because there was a confusion between UI kit and a design system. Again, design system is more based on the visual language of the company rather than just components and pattern. And we didn't have that in that company. And then how to implement correctly the design tokens with us, it was a challenge because I was at that point educating myself about how design tokens work, which is an essential part. And one important thing, remember, design tokens is basically something that developers and engineers have been doing for long, long time. They already use CSS variables, SCSS variables. They have been using this for probably like more than 10 years, because CSS is available for since the internet times with HTML and CSS. So they have been using variables for longer than the designers, and basically we are just replicating what they do in our designs and trying to establish. The more important part is to establish a structure of the naming of the variables, because you need to have an organization. So we'll
Yeah.
cover that next. Um, so the heuristics evaluation brought us even more like ideas of what was wrong. And there are like just 2 small screenshots that I belong to the company at the time. This was the interface. As you can see, it's the same system, but you can see we have different colors for the buttons, no accessibility contrast, uh, rounded buttons here, square buttons in other places, drop downs that were not consistent, tables were inconsistent, spacing was inconsistent, navigation has different navigation, secondary navigation. So I cannot go in deep into the heuristics, but we have a full report with heuristics and what we wanted to prioritize. Probably I can
Mm-hmm.
find the file for you if we have time at the end, but it was in detail what we found and what we wanted to prioritize based on research and based on the heuristics. But in general, we have inconsistency in the forms, in the tables, data visualization, navigation structure, right? So we started just, this was probably the most challenging part, make the stakeholders in the other teams, even my colleagues, designers, to understand that what is a design system, because everyone had an idea of UI kit, but for them, even for my colleagues, was a UI kit. So I just trying to extend this idea. A design system is more complex, more complete, and if done correctly from the foundations, it can serve for, a scale up. So basically a design system for, I'm pretty sure that most of you are familiar with that, but is basically a set of standards to to establish a kind of shared language across the platforms and across systems. It doesn't matter the channel. It can be even used in XML for mobile devices like Android, and Swift for Apple devices or for web apps, because the taxonomy of the variables can be the same in all the platforms. So that was one thing that we try to convey as a team to the other teams and the stakeholders. And once they understood the need of this and how it works, they basically gave us the green light of this. And this is also, by the way, a product of probably about 6 months of work. It's not something that we did in 1 month. It was a huge amount of work there from my team. Um, so what we said to the stakeholders and the other teams is basically, if we have a design system, we can have big wins and great advantages. One is like, once you have something settled that you can evolve over time at a good design system, you can focus in larger problems, that you can focus on the user research. So
Yeah.
that was a big win in front of the stakeholders, because they say, okay, we save time in production and releasing products, so we can focus on the user. That's even better. And the stakeholders want to know, okay, this is going to save us not money. So that was the case. So basically, we wanted to have a unified language. So that was another advantage. Create at scale, which is the specific case in this presentation. Visual consistency. And believe it or not, this is absolutely essential educational tool. Once done correctly, and it's happening to us even within JP Morgan, this is becoming an educational tool. Once other designers understand what is behind a design system, they start adopting and be even more interested in this. So it was a very good choice to make an education here. This is basically just what I explained a little bit earlier. When you create variables or tokens, these are basically agnostic. So you can create the same structure of the taxonomy of the variable for XML, for Swift, for CSS, and even CSS like the simpler way. Yes, it's different. It's slightly different, but the composition is almost the same. And as you can see, it's the same name, but for instance, Swift, you don't need any dashes or dots. In XML, you need the lower dash. So it's slightly different, but the taxonomy is always the same. So that allows you to have like the same variable hosting different, let's say, color values, the spacing values, or sizing values.
Okay.
Uh,
I want to. Can you go back one step?
yes, sure.
Yeah. So, like, many people will not understand what platform agnostic is. So, do you want to like expand on that?
Absolutely. When it says platform agnostic, it means that, you can have the same variable structure for XML. As you can see in XML, you have button, lower dash, Radi, lower dash, primary. This is an example from Amazon. From Amazon Style Dictionary is called. I think I shared the links at the end of the presentation with you,
Yes.
but we can share later. Yeah. So this is a very clear idea this is a screenshot from Amazon when they show you how is it structured for XML for Android apps. And right here is button, Radi, primary. It's basically the same, but in Swift, in iOS, for Apple devices, you don't use dashes, but the taxonomy is the same. Same words, just different way of writing the variables in code. And during the web in CSS is basically, we use the middle dash. So it's button, Radi, primary. So it's the same name of the variable,
Mm-hmm.
but the variables host a hex color. If we do colors, it holds a hex color. And I'm going to show you in a demo later. But just to make you aware that when I said platform agnostic is basically that you can use the same variable structure in different platforms. It doesn't matter if it's for Android, doesn't matter if it's for iOS, it doesn't matter if it's for web. You can
Okay.
use the same structure for all those. Is
Yeah.
that uh, is
So,
that
can I
something that
add?
helps?
Yeah, yeah, it helps, but I just want to add something here for people that might be new. So I'm
Yeah.
sure many of us are, yeah, can you just tell this? I'm sure many of us are like familiar with Figma. And then when we create a button, we add a color to it, or we add like a radius padding, right? So when we go to code, we are going to call that name, right, of that system. So we have an engine called the style dictionary. So the style dictionary is where we store all of those information as a data instead of like as an actual interface that you can see in the aspect of code now. So, and the way we have it now on the website, like if you are building for a website or you are building a web app, it's going to be under a styling file which is called CSS. Sometimes we call it style.css. So in that style.css now, we now have so we are going to call the name. So it's going to be button, and then the button is going to have a radius, and then it's going to be a primary. So we could have primary, secondary, tertiary. And what primary, secondary, tertiary is doing there is that is talking about like the different sizes that may be available. So our primary could be like the smallest size of button, only radius size of button can be like 4 pixels, 8 pixels, and so on. Then when you see BG means background color. Then we also have like text color and so on. So this is just an example to give us an idea of what it is. We're still going to do like a demo of the full detail. So when you see iOS and Android, so I'm sure many of us are familiar with iOS. So the programming language for iOS is called Swift, and the programming language used for styling in Android is called XML. So it's just that it's just all about styling. And then so when he said platform agnostic, was talking about like on Figma is literally the same name that you can use it, but when developers are writing it as code, right? So and the essence of this is that so that when you are trying to deliver or make handoffs, you'd have to make all the specification for them. But again, interestingly, Figma has done majority of this stuff so that it's very easy to know. But having a knowledge of it will help you think about how to structure them effectively. Ivan, did I go off for it?
You explain it even better than me, so don't worry. This is great. Yeah. Yeah, and
Okay.
that's something to highlight. Something that I forgot is basically this is the way that programmers or developers write styling.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we are basically, as I said at the beginning, we are replicating as a designers what they have been doing for probably a few years now. So we are behind the code. I think code is beautiful. I'm not a coder, but I think code is even more flexible than design. So even it's very important for us as designers to learn this and understand what they do, developers. Once you understand a little bit of their work, you will become definitely a better designer in general. Okay, so let's jump to the next one. Can be confusing. And probably, I don't know, depending on the size of the screens, you cannot read it. But this is a good example of how it looks in code, right? And this is an example of what Ari was explaining to you. So this example comes from Spectrum, is a button from Adobe Design System. It's called Spectrum. So I did a screenshot because probably this one is a very clear idea of what's behind the code and what's behind the design. So this is a regular button, a danger button from a Spectrum, right? And we have a background color and we have a text color or foreground color, but this is a text color. So for the background, they call it danger background. This is the variable, right? In let's say in Figma, and danger text. But on hover state, the colors might change, right? So they use this danger background hover and danger text hover. So this has different color values. It has different variables. These variables host a specific text color. And this is the way it's written in code, right? It comes from here, right? Let's start from this side. Danger background. A danger background is like the name selector that you find here. So just imagine that this example component, this is the button, and this is the hover state of the button, this one here, right? So you have the same names, danger background, danger text, danger background hover, danger text hover. So this is what you see visually here. This is what is in code. What comes from this? It should have a value, right? So it's written this way, like we have the selectors and also the variables. So this is class the selector danger background, and this hosts this specific variable, color danger background, which is basically the same. If you go to color, the root color danger background is this hex color. So let's say that in a design system, this can give you an idea that you want to do the warning button, right? Or let's say that you want to change the color of the danger button, right? If you want to change the color, basically you change it here and it replicates to all the buttons you have in your system. So this is a big change. So it's a kind of chain effect. And this is the beautiful thing about the variables in code. I think it's even better than in Figma that we're trying to replicate that. So let me know if this is confusing, because at the beginning it's confusing. It was very confusing for me, and so I started reading about this and this. Then when I understood it is when I just basically fell in love with design systems and how this works. But just let me know if you have questions or you want to clarify something, Adi, just let me know. We can just stop by or keep going. Are we okay moving forward, right?
Yes, yes. Well, okay, moving forward.
Yeah. So in the company, to build consistency, basically, my lack of knowledge, basically, we didn't know what to do in terms of taxonomy. So I was following a little bit what Amazon was doing at the time and mixing something from Carbon Design and Amazon. And we just definitely decided to go with this specific structure. Just define a category as a core, and then you can have category, type, then item. It was not necessarily, it is optional, so item optional, and depending also, also state, right? So in the example of the button, it was like color, background, button, primary, active. This is a very simple example, right? But usually buttons are the best way to explain this kind of stuff. So we went in the company with this specific structure, but with minor updates. So when we finish our work, our structure was a little bit like this. This is the hex color. We have a core token, which is the hosting the color family, and then the color palette in the family, and then the color interactive 01, which is basically this was the background of our buttons in the company at the time, and this is the text, the default text in the company. And just, I wanted to show the differentiation that we had from Amazon and our structure at the time, which is the only design system. And one thing that I would like to highlight over time, I can tell you that this specific, more specific and longer structure is even more efficient than the one that we use. I wanted to simplify in my lack of experience. I made mistakes. This works, but it won't allow you to expand even deeper. So this kind of structure, just being more specific, allow you to more flexibility to give more, to expand further the design system in the visual language over time. And we use in JP Morgan something more even more complex like this, but it works. And I can tell you that if I had to change something from my previous work, definitely I would redefine the taxonomy of the variables. This is an example that I did in the past, and I wanted to keep this script short because again, I also wanted to share the mistakes that I made. So I don't know if they can answer right now this question, but let me know if you notice something wrong in my past work and this specific screenshot, if you can see it, because there are like specific things that I made mistakes, and I can tell you after, at the end of the presentation, but just remember the screenshot. And if you can answer right now, I don't know, Adi, how the system is, but I wanted to keep this all one because I want to show my mistakes too. Yeah, and basically this was a kind of indication of how we was using in a card, right?
Mm-hmm.
Color text, secondary text was color text 02 and was host a specific value. Color text 01, like the main text that you had, the color main text. Also
Mm-hmm.
color interactive 01, basically the color of the background and things like that, right? So I want to
Yes.
show you a very simple example. Now let's jump to a small demo, but this demo, I would say it's even, I'm using more the structure that we use in JP Morgan. There are some fixes, but this is a very, very simple example. This is a very small sample compared to what you need to do in a design system. So to give you an idea, just remember that the initial part is like, just imagine that, this has a hex color, and then you need to build like the palette. Eight colors in the palette of blue, or 10 or 9, depending on the needs you have, or depending on the visual language you build. But I want to show you how this is built small in variables. This is very small. You cannot imagine how this file is in JP Morgan. We have everything divided even in different files. So in the theme one, this is the one that I'm showing you. Just to build this small thing, you need something like this, right? Where you have where you have like the blue palette for the buttons and just, you know, the core background, which is white, and the core foreground, which is black. So things like that you need to include. I'm going to show you in Div. You have questions further, but just wanted to show you that this is a small demo for here. And I built two themes just to show you that even it can be platform agnostic, and also it can be theme agnostic. And you can reuse the same variables even through theming, through platforms, and that can be very powerful. And also in the theme too, I included some changes. It's basically just the same example with different colors and different spacing and different rounded, no, same spacing and different rounded corners. So I have variables for color, variables for spacing, basic spacing, and variables for corners in the buttons. And everything comes, the two themes come from this core set of variables. So we have this main core, and then we have the blue palette, the gray palette, and the purple palette. Everything comes from here. So as I show you, this button, in fact, if you use like the color palette is basically blue 500, blue 600, in active state is blue 700, and then the text is white. But if you include this as a variable, this changes. So this become actionable background, actionable foreground. I put this simple, this is more complex, but you know, actionable background for the background button, actionable foreground, and the same. Actionable background hover, actionable foreground hover. And these structures allow you to change stuff. The powerful thing about this, and you can ask why you cannot use like directly the blue 700, the blue 500, is because once you do that, you can also, you know, again, it's mode agnostic. You set the values for the dark mode and the light mode. So even in Figma, you can switch, and probably you're familiar with this, but you can switch and check how it works in dark mode. And you can keep the consistency of it. This way you can analyze the palette when it generates enough color contrast in the dark mode and the light mode, and check accessibility and have accessibility checks, which is absolutely important. I have learned a lot about accessibility in JP Morgan because we have two accessibility experts, and they are absolutely astonishing. It's not only about color, but it's about screen readers. Again, it's much more complex. It's the more we get in deep in design system, the more you will learn that, you know, accessibility is a big thing that you need to take care of. So this is the way it works. So I'm going to show you just a kind of theme one, and remember I show you in the variables the theme two. So the only changes that I have made, it hosts basically the same gray values, the same gray palette. I changed this to the purples, but again, if I try to change right here to mode, it's not possible because you're using core colors from the core palette, or the purple ones, the purple family. But if you include these as tokens, you can change that. And I didn't want to change here only color. Right here, I'm changing also how to set up rounded corners in a different theme. So basically, it's same absolute structure. Let me show you again the variables. This is very slow. My apologies. Theme two. What I have done here is the same. I use rounded one is rounded 0, 2. The same variables that I use in theme one. The only difference is that the values you host there are different, right? And
Yes.
these values allow you to have like these rounded corners. And when you change, basically you can have this in a different theme, same taxonomy, same variable, just different values hosted there and coming from a different family. So if you change to dark, it's still working and still accessible. But what I always said, the visual foundation is more important than just the component, because in your palette, you need to analyze what colors this contrast with and can generate enough contrast in dark and light mode. So you need to find in that palette a specific balance to tackle all the challenges that you might have in terms of accessibility and color contrast. So yeah, foundations and the foundational colors are extremely important if you want to grow your design system. And yeah, again, and this is a very small demo. This is a small thing in a big world. And a small thing also can have a ripple effect in not only a design system, but all the platforms that are using this design system. And this needs to be done like with a lot of responsibility and a lot of thought behind that. And just to finish, I want to show you the results in the company I work for. In about 6 months, the after the 6 months, in a period of probably about like 60 days, 60, I remember that our product manager had the study like in 60 something days, let's say 60 days, we were just to able to iterate, moving things from design and code to testing to 2x faster. And let me tell you why. Because when we built the design system, we were building this with the developers. So whatever we had in the design system and the design language in the variables, it was replicated in code. So whatever you design, the developers already had there, and they just need to put the pieces in place. And this accelerate and scale your product. And the results were really good. Basically, we save money to the company, save time to the teams. We reduced the time of the meetings. That was great. We reduced the time of the meetings between design and development. And we reduced the use of resources. Stakeholders love to hear that you're reducing the use of resources, that you're efficient and you're making money for them. So those are things that I can tell you these were the results. And the takeaways that and let me tell you, this is basically a screenshot of what we had in the past, what I show you, and the results after the design system. This is not perfect, but I think you can see there's a big wing, right? It's something visible, right, in the screenshot?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. So if it's like it was a big win, not only for the team, and also it was adopted for other teams over time. The takeaways that we had from this as a team, not only myself, is that we became the source of truth for other teams to expand this further. We were all able as a design and development team to scale up and move things faster. We were the promoters of the design culture after that. Even the developers get involved on this. And one challenge also, but it's a consideration, was who's going to maintain this and evolve. And unfortunately, at that time, I left the company. I moved to JP Morgan. So I don't know what happened after who's maintaining or expanding this, but we saw a lot of opportunities to expand and make it even better. Yeah. And those are the things that I had to share. Hopefully it was like worthy to for you and the whole community here.
Yes, this is really amazing because like you're able to simplify, like give an example of how we can break down design system to be very very simple, because it's actually a very complex system so to speak, but like showing this as a form of entry point should give people an idea of what it is. So let me just put this out there quickly before we start the Q&A session. So if you'd like to learn more about design system, I have a different class for that. There's the inner room group, and then there's the UX Masterclass Pro group, where I teach the full details of everything, and also go take you through practical steps one after the other in order to create this system effectively. So Q&A session. So in the YouTube channel, do we have any questions? So if we have any questions, please let's share that. Okay. So Ivan, you talked about like taxonomy. So could you like try and break down what taxonomy is?
Sure. Let me share a little bit again.
Okay.
Here we can. Let's go back to the taxonomy. Oh, let me go to the demo.
Yeah.
I can give you a better perspective of what is here. So the taxonomy is basically the structure you decide to make, the way you need to standardize or organize your tokens. Each company do it differently, and I have some examples here in this file. Each company use, I have an example from Asana, I remember. They use sentiment and something else. And also I have like right here, yeah, I have from Adobe, right? So the taxonomy is basically the way you build the name of your tokens. In Asana, for instance, this button use like the sentiment, which is selected, right? The usage, prominence, and interaction. They try to keep this taxonomy for all the component, all the tokens that they use. And they have like this core elements that's called sentiment, usage, prominence, interaction. If you remember the example that I gave you in Amazon, they use category and then it drops down to four things more until state. So
Yes.
that's the taxonomy, the way you generate and build the logic of your tokens. Also depending of the size of the design system. If you remember when I told you the mistakes that I made, that our
Mhm.
design system at the time was small, so probably they don't need more than that. But in JP Morgan, if you need to build something like that, it doesn't work for JP Morgan because you need to expand it to go to the more specifics. So it's the way you name your tokens in short. And this is another example, right? This is from Adobe. And the taxonomy they use is a component specific token. And they use like, I remember it was like the element variant, I remember well. But basically the taxonomy right here is like, this is the hex value, this is the palette, and they have the taxonomy for us, another level of tokens, and then they have this one. So you can see it was, I don't remember exactly, but it was element, variant,
Yes.
attribute and call, and attribute and something
Primitive
else. Yeah,
primitive.
something like that. I don't remember.
So like the first one, that is the primitive value, which is the actual base X code color. And then the alias the all from blue 400 all the way to button CTA background color, they are all aliases. And then we have like your component specific colors, which is the last one, button CTA background color to
Ah,
that, so
yes,
the specific
exactly.
colors.
Yeah, but that's the same. Yeah, but that's the semantics. The
Yeah, yeah.
taxonomy is specifically this. The taxonomy is this, right? This
Yes,
line.
yes,
This is
button.
the whole semantics behind the token. But
Yes,
we're talking about taxonomy is
taxonomy.
how they structure this.
Yes.
And in the example that I showed you, I use a little bit of JP Morgan. In JP Morgan, we call characteristics is the
Okay.
core. Let me show you here. Is that each company can create their own taxonomy based on their needs, right? In
Yes.
our case, in JP Morgan, we use characteristics,
Yes.
and this is a characteristic, right? Actionable, because it's related to action. It doesn't matter, it's a button. You can include on the actionable, you can use tokens for links, which are
Yes.
actionable elements, toggle
Yes.
buttons, and
Yes.
buttons. So this is the semantic we use, characteristics. Then the second is a variant, which is optional. So you can have a variant in a component, or a component needs a variant, so you can expand the variant in the taxonomy. But this one is mandatory. In JP Morgan, we use a variant, which is optional. Then it comes another important one, which is attribute. The
Yeah.
attribute is background, foreground, border, things like
Mm-hmm.
that. The next attribute is a state, right?
Yes.
For when you add tokens that need state,
Yeah.
and it expands sometimes a little further, depending of the needs. But those are the core. It's characteristics, variant, attribute, state. That's
Yeah.
the core taxonomy of JP Morgan. Hopefully this can answer your question, but it's basically each company create their own taxonomy. Remember,
Yeah.
Asana is sentiment and something else. We use
Yeah.
characteristics. And just to give you an idea, what's actually, another characteristic for us is selectable. So selectable elements like checkboxes,
Checkboxes before.
check, exactly. And there are like selectable toggle buttons go
Yeah.
under this characteristic. And
Yes.
we
Yes.
have also separable, right? Just tokens for separable elements like borders that need
Mm-hmm.
to separate content. So we
Mm-hmm.
have separable, it can be separable, um, different colors of the separable elements. It goes
Yes.
under these characteristics. So hopefully this answers your questions, right? Because we can
Yeah.
have separable primary border,
Mm-hmm.
separable secondary border, which is probably a lighter color,
Yeah.
separable tertiary border. So
Yes.
that's characteristic, variant,
Parents.
and attribute.
Attributes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the taxonomy.
Yeah. So thank you for that. So the next question that was asked is at what point do you need a design system? Is it that before they even start the application at all? Or they must have started the application and then that's when you introduce variable? You introduce the design system.
Very good question. I think we have on a stage of maturation of design systems
Okay.
that we have seen like design systems in larger companies at the beginning. I think, if I'm not wrong, Salesforce was the first company introducing this combination of tokens with design in 2016, 17. Since
Mm.
then, large companies like Amazon and other companies like, including JP Morgan, understood that design system is complex. Now there's an adoption of the mid-sized companies, and even startups start adopting this concept of design systems.
Yes.
And I don't see any wrong, honestly. If there's a vision of doing a small company grow, do this from the core. So it depends. Let's say that you join as a contractor to a small company that only has a UI kit, right? But
Mm-hmm.
there's no visual foundation behind that. You as a contractor can propose it just to revamp that. But let's say if you're starting your own app, or your own product, or you're starting a startup that they need to build from scratch right now, a design system, you can
Yeah.
start that. So it depends, I think, to answer your question, it depends of the company. It can be in the middle of the road, if you as a contractor can propose it and they want to do it in the middle of the road, or do it from the beginning.
Yes.
But the more this evolves, right now right now you have more information than probably 5, 6 years ago in design systems.
Yes.
Uh, so it's because there's some level of moderation there, and you
Ma-
can replicate some practices, check what other design systems have done wrong, because
Yes.
not all of them are perfect. Not even Salt, which is the team that I belong. There are plenty of things to improve, but there are a lot of information right now that you can go check and use it in any stage of the company that you need to work for. If, for instance, we have a UI kit in the company that I show in the use case, but
Yes.
we didn't have a design system. So what I did is read myself, propose to the stakeholders in the middle of the road, because everyone was building their own thing. The design teams were building their own thing, and everything was not consistent. So I said, okay, hey guys, we're building different products, I know, but we need to be consistent across teams too. Let me propose this. So at the time, the design director said, okay, move forward, let's do a presentation to the stakeholders and see what happens. And they understood that, this requires some resources, but if you do this wrong, you're going to save a lot of money to the company in the midterm and long term. Yeah,
Yeah.
so you can apply to any stage, I think.
Okay. So you can apply it to any stage. So at whatever it's depending on which stage.
Majority of the company.
So let's say,
Yeah.
for example, now you have a small company and then you want to quickly push out a product in, like, say, 2 weeks, right? I think at that point now, just pushing out the product is your priority, and then immediately after pushing out the product, you can introduce a design system. But if the company can wait, like, maybe an extension of 1 month, right? You can introduce this design system in, like, the first or second week, so that it can speed up your design process. But Ivan, this will now lead to another question. So let's say, for example, there's a new component that was created because of the experience. Let's say they had, like, a different experience in the course of trying to build an actual component. So how then do they update the design system to match that without breaking the entire platform?
Another good question. Yeah, I have learned this in JP Morgan with my team. I have a great manager he was one thing that you need to understand about design system is the important thing is to this scale. So it's not a matter of creating components. It's something that I have learned here in JP Morgan, and I explained since the beginning. More
Yeah.
important is the foundational stuff. It's not about creating more and more components. Components, you have there a lot of examples out there, and the simpler the elements you create, the more compositional can be your interface.
Mhm.
So you need to analyze when there's a big need to create a component, and when there's a big need to create, just to create a pattern. And I'm right now owner of the patterns in my team. So
Okay.
for instance, I can give you a very simple example. In the previous design system before Salt, it was a design system called UI Toolkit
Okay.
for this JP Morgan. And we have, even as a component, we have a wizard as a component when you have like the steps, the stepper there on top, interfaces with forms. and the
Mm-hmm.
next and back buttons and things like that. So it was treated as a component. But
Yeah.
if you're aware of that, you don't need to create a component for that.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, that's a pattern. You have the buttons, you have the form fields,
Mm-hmm.
so you can lay it out depending on the experience. Probably, there's a product that doesn't need this specific structure of the wizard. They can create their own pattern. So they need only the form fields, the stepper, the buttons, and they can lay it out in different way based on the user needs, but using the core and foundational elements of the design system, which is more important. They are using the components with the right visuals, plus they need to use the spacing from the design system. It doesn't matter how they build the pattern, but sometimes there's no need to create more components. The, Something that I have learned again here is the scale,
Mm-hmm.
check what you have, the scale what you have, what you need to what you need, and then
Yeah.
scale up again as a pattern. And this is something, it's a big learning here. Sometimes you don't need components. You need just very basic components. Descale the number of components based on the needs of the platform and the user needs, and then scale up as a pattern. Build a
Oh,
design language that allow you to build this pattern. And I can repeat, and I will repeat this over and over again.
good. Yeah.
More important than the design system is the visual language behind that. How you build the
Okay.
palettes, how you build the structure of the spacing, how you
Mm-hmm.
build the structure of the sizing,
Mm-hmm.
and those are elemental things that if you do that right, then
Yeah.
you can just say, okay, right now I can build my design system based on the foundational stuff that you have. That's more
Okay.
important.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So there you have it. So say for example you are trying to build a new interface, right, that does not specify specifically a particular item in the design system. But if you have something very related to it, you can just use that and you can detach that component to update it. And then if it's something that is constantly being reused by other teams, that is when you want to like adopt it into your component system. But if it's something that you're just going to use once or two times and that will be all, then it doesn't make any sense for you to add it as an overall component. I think the suggestion here would be even if they are going to have it as a component, it should be like in a separate file of like inspirational ideas for said components so that we have the visual language system in one place and then the additional optional specs in another place and then we can just look and match and reuse over time. So I think that's a very good answer, Ivan. Okay, so let's go to the next phase because I think we only have like 5 minutes more on the call. So the next phase now is to talk about like um growing as a designer and trying to get into like um companies like JP Morgan. So what would you say your experience was like when you tried to join in into JP Morgan?
Well, you're doing good questions, man. I think each path is different. Each path is absolutely different. Um, I can see even in the company, right? There are like designers that don't understand very well the design system, but are extremely good on UX and building the experience with the design system you provide. So each designer is different. They have their own profile. They have their. I was even like putting a shelf like you belong to a UI team, and I said no, I'm not UI. The design system is different than UI. It's more like deeper. But each designer has different path, different, let's call attributes or skills,
Mm-hmm.
and each one needs to understand what they do best, and then focus on specifically the areas that it's difficult when you're starting, but it's to focus on specifically on something. But if you see that there's something that's interesting for you, probably you need to learn and grow a little bit more in that area. At the beginning, you need to learn a little bit of everything, but
Everything,
over
yeah.
time you will see it. But for instance, in the beginning, I remember I told you this yesterday. I knew that I studied graphic design. I
Yeah.
discovered that I do this correctly, but I knew that also print is not for me. So I was clear, I need to do web design. So I had a clear idea, okay, print is not for me, I will move to web design. The more I learned web design, I had a clear idea, okay, I need to move to product design or UX design, but, but, I have a basic learning how to do landing pages and things like that. but I
Mhm.
don't have a lot of knowledge. So I need to move to a company that provides me what I have right now, something that I designed for web apps, but give me the extra thing that I had in mind. I need to join to the fintech. So I had clear that the next step was to move to the industry I wanted. So I was just pointing to the fintech companies. When I was looking for a job, I was pointing to the fintech companies. But I had an idea what to do. Not clear, but I had an idea, okay, it should be fintech. After fintech, I can tell you when I jumped from the previous company, the crypto company, to JP Morgan, it was more kind of a coincidence. I don't believe in coincidence, but I want to use that word just to make it simpler. I believe in in a supreme, uh, let's God for me, right? But it's difficult to talk about religion, but I believe that there's no coincidence. So there was a time that I was prepared for design system. I was preparing myself. I discovered this in the previous company. I said, okay, this
Yeah.
is the next thing. I right now it was web design. I belong to the industry I want to belong. I keep in the industry I want to belong, but
Mhm.
I want to focus on design systems. And I was
That's
recruited
what.
by,
Like,
yeah, exactly. I was recruited by someone who said, okay, there's a position for design systems. And when everything went well, because I was prepared for that. So it
mhm.
was a kind of my path, but each person have its own challenges, its own path, its own skills. It doesn't need that you need to learn design systems. You are not fit for that because not every designer wants to learn about code. And I have colleagues in my team that prefer, the developer prefer to work with me because I understand a lot of things that they do. But even in my team, there are the designers that prefer to focus on the experience of the building the product in the website.
Yeah.
The Solve website is a product, right?
Yeah.
So I have colleagues that focus on that area in my team that are more focused on user experience, not the
Yes.
specifications.
Yeah.
It depends on the profile, and it will just going back to the question to make it simple. Each person has his own path. Just try to find that skill or that you think you have a little bit like higher than the others, and then focus on that. Okay, I can use this for my purposes, and be prepared. This is probably the most important. Be prepared for rejection over and over again. I gave you my example. I have a record of 82 rejections when I
Yeah.
was looking for the first time a job here in the US a few years ago. 82 applications, and I just got one job. So be prepared to psychologically for rejection is pretty much normal.
Yeah. 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 So I have a follow-up question. So if let's just pick at the point of a design system person now. So let's say I want to apply for as a design system person. What are the what are the things that what things do I need to know, or how best can I position myself to look to look like an expert in the field to be able to get me my dream job in design system.
Design system. First of all, I will tell you, read, read, for sure. I told you this yesterday. I'm a very bad book reader, but when I got interested in design systems, I started reading articles, I started reading blogs, I started reading, navigating all the design systems available, try to look for information about what a design system is. So start from the scratch. That's probably the main, if you are not fully familiar with that, start from scratch understanding this. Don't start designing a design system. You don't need that. First start understanding what a design system is. Try to read it and understand that below that, the foundation, the visual language is more important than any component, any pattern. If the foundations are done wrong, you will have, to change over time, like over and over again, the structure of the components, the spacing of the components, the color of the components, if the palette is not correct, if the ramp of the spacing is not analyzed correctly, if the ramp of the responsiveness is not analyzed correctly, you will have challenges to implement a design system. So
Yeah.
go read a lot if you're interested in that, learn from them, learn from developers. They are more experienced than I. Remember, this was built before us. This variable structure what has been
Yeah.
used for developers more time, but most of them lack of the visualization of how to use this correctly. So that's when we come in place. So you need to complement the knowledge. and they need that visual part to understand that okay, we can use this your code and everything in the right way in visuals. So get involved in understanding HTML and CSS that's your area. Design system is your area. At least the core elements, HTML and CSS, and there are free resources. I start learning in. I know that developers hate this place. It's called W3 Schools,
Yeah,
W3C Schools, or something like that.
yeah,
It's
W3.
very simple. Yeah. Go
Yeah,
there. There's information for us as the designers that we can learn. Very simple. And then if you feel interested, you can even expand to code. My
yeah,
first website, I coded myself. My first portfolio, I coded myself because I wanted to explore how can I use HTML and CSS?
yeah.
And I was checking because of this presentation, I was checking my old files. I have hosted my old website here in my computer. And it
Yes, yeah.
wasn't that bad, right? I wasn't using variables. I was doing a lot of things wrong, but I see, okay, I was doing like the foundation was correct. So go
Foundational.
explore code if that's yours, because that's important for design. It's very important because you will iterate stuff with developers more than ever. Not
Yeah.
in, in a product, it's normal to work with developers, but in
Hmm.
design system, you will work hand on hand. So whatever you move in design, they will move into, at some point in production. So you need to take care of the little details.
Hmm.
And yeah, that's probably my advice too. I talk too much, but that's my advice.
I think most designers I've met, they actually talk too much. But it's all good. It's all good. So there you have it, guys. So a quick summary will be, if you want to get familiar with design system, you have to read a lot. You need to pick up a lot of articles. We are going to be dropping links of places you can read from. Then if you like to learn more about design system, the inner room provided by Fremont Dojo is available for you, or the UX Master Class Pro group. You can always ask the Fremont community um manager, and she'll be able to help you with the right set of links to use. Then again, I'll be having a 24 hours vibe coding challenge. There, I'll be teaching you HTML, CSS, how to talk to AI to build interesting app, how to conduct quick validation processes in order to just build a quick MVP. That will be on Wednesday, 12 a.m. EST and 7 a.m. West African time. So it's going to be for 24 hours building back to back, where you can also ask questions. The channels that will be available will be on Twitch, YouTube, and TikTok. So, uh, Evan, final question. Is there anything that you like to say or share? Maybe a word of advice or a quote that you find fascinating to close this program?
No, no, just a small thing. In the links that you're planning to drop to the community,
Yes.
there's a guy. I learned a lot from these small blogs. He writes
Yeah.
blogs and he's a consultant. He's called
Okay.
Nathan Cortes.
Okay. Nathan
Yeah, if
Cortez.
you Google it, you will find articles about him. He's
Okay.
a specific consultant for design systems. I don't know if he's still doing the same, but he was doing this consultancy from years ago, and I started reading. This is a good
So
starting point
it's
to read.
Is Cortez spelled Cortes or Z?
Nathan, I spell it mal. Nathan.
Yeah,
Nathan
yeah, yeah.
Curtis is
Cortez. Okay.
Curtys, I think. But if you Google, you will find Nathan Curtis. You can put Nathan Curtis Design Systems. You will find him.
Oh, okay,
This
cool.
guy, this when I start interested in design systems, reading more, this was the I would say these readings are very valuable. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
okay. Nathan Cortez. Yeah, Nathan Cortez design system.
yeah,
See,
and final thoughts. Just thank you for having me. I hope this session has been useful for all of you, and it's keep in touch. Probably we can just join at some point, 1 more year, 2 more years, and see who has improved and just join the industry of the design system.
yes, yes, definitely. Mhm. So thank you. And that will be all. So I want to run the live stream now.